Labyrinth, a novel based on the Jim Henson film by ACH Smith. Read by Rose in the Library. Chapter 8. A Very Loud Voice. Once they had left the wise man, Sarah and Hoggle found that by walking forward they could move ahead. It made a nice change. Not, however, any more than a nice change, because the maze of hedges turned them left and right and back again so often that it was impossible to make any progress toward the castle. Frequently it could be seen, its spires and turrets looming in the distance above the hedges. But no matter how far and fast they walked, it remained in the distance. Sarah was still thinking about the wise man. "Hoggle," she asked, "how do you tell when someone's talking sense and when he's talking rubbish?" Hoggle shrugged impatiently. "How should I know? All I know is we're going to get ourselves well and truly lost in this place. Let me go back." "Not on your life. You're sticking with me now until we get there," Sarah said, wondering how much time she had left. Hoggle said, "Huh," rather noncommittally, she thought. Well, she still had his precious string of baubles. He wouldn't get that back until she had found Toby, and she judged that nothing would induce him to abandon her while she still had his treasure. Alley, turning, alley, dead end, stone pillar, alley, ornamental shrub, turning. On it went, leading nowhere. Sarah wondered whether it wasn't a closed system. No exit but its entrance, that urn. It was just the kind of puzzle that Jareth would set to waste what time she had left. But if that were so, she shuddered. Would she have the courage to go back into the urn and down that ladder and start over in that awful subterranean passageway? Down, 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 down. She remembered the hands and the oubliette and that terrifying slashing machine and Jareth in the beggar costume. She recalled a sentence that her mother had once read aloud to her from a book, as she liked to do when something caught her fancy. "Mind what you say to a beggar. It might be a god in disguise." When she saw her mother again, she would tell her, or it might just be the king of the goblins. She shrugged. How could she be expected to have any respect for Jareth? He was dangerous and powerful, obviously, but he was too aware of it. A show-off, really, and mean, a cheat. He had a certain style to him, she could concede that much. He was not unattractive. But how could you respect, still less admire, someone like him? The best word she could think of to describe him was cad. Alley, turning, alley. On they trudged. Hedged in as they were, they couldn't see that they were not completely alone in the maze. The head and coils of a sea serpent rode along above a hedge quite close to them. Though they had actually encountered the beast, they might have spotted 3 little pairs of goblin feet running along beneath it, and heard the grunts of goblins supporting the parts of the serpent. Several times they narrowly missed meeting a mounted goblin, with lance and flag, who had been sent out by Jareth to look for them, and spent an hour galloping at random. Hoggle was quiet for some time. Then he asked, "Why did you say that about me, being your friend?" "Because you are," she told him candidly. "You may not be much of a friend, but you're the only one I've got in this place." Hoggle thought about it for a while. Then he said, "I ain't never been no one's friend before." An enormous, blood-curdling roar from somewhere nearby froze the two of them in their tracks. Hoggle spun round, pausing only to say, "Keep the stuff." He started to run back, away from the roar. Sarah ran after him and seized hold of his sleeve. "Wait a minute," she said angrily. "Are you my friend or not?" While Hoggle hesitated, another air-trembling roar made up his mind for him. No, I'm not. Hoggle ain't no one's friend. He looks after himself, like everyone." He wriggled his sleeve free. "Hoggle is Hoggle's friend," she heard him yell as he dashed in the opposite direction from the roaring and vanished into the maze. "Hoggle!" Sarah called. "You coward!" She heard another frightful roar, but stayed where she was. The monster, whatever it was, did not seem to be getting any closer. "Well," she said, speaking out loud to reassure herself, "I'm not going to be afraid. Things are not always what they seem in this place. That's what the wise man said." The sound came again like a pride of starving lions roaring in unison. "It could be some tiny creature," Sarah told herself. "Perfectly harmless. Just that it happens to have a very loud voice." After all, by far the loudest person at home was Toby, and he couldn't do you any harm. Was there some law she had never grasped? Something to do with the smallest creatures making the loudest noise? Did dinosaurs roar? She decided not. They would have made a low growling noise. But what about ants, then? Probably they made a terrible noise, somewhere beyond the range of human hearing. As she was not going to run away, the only alternative was to proceed in the direction that they had been going, with some shred of faith that forward meant onward. And so, crossing her fingers for luck, she moved tentatively along the hedge alley. When she reached a gap in the hedge and peered cautiously through it, she saw that things were, indeed, not always what they seemed. The roar was coming from a terrifyingly huge beast, but the animal was upside down, suspended by one leg, lashed to a tree. It was roaring with pain, because 4 goblins were tormenting it with nipper sticks, long poles with small, fierce creatures on the end of them that bit like piranha whenever they were given the chance. The great beast, who was covered with shaggy, ginger hair, flailed out haplessly at the goblins, but the only result was that its body swung to and fro. That improved the game for the goblins, giving each of them the opportunity to dart in ahead of the others and get in a cruel thrust with the nipper stick before the bellowing, frantically swatting beast had completed its swing back. They were clearly having the time of their lives. They vied with each other in how soft a part of the beast's body they could reach, and how long they could hold the nipping teeth in there before they had to jump out of the way of its desperate arms. So absorbed were they that Sarah was able to leave the hedge and come closer without any risk of their noticing her. She was appalled by the scene. "The little beasts," she muttered to herself. She looked around for a weapon and found some small rocks. She picked one up, took careful aim, and threw it at the nearest goblin. It hit him on the head, knocking the visor of his helmet down over his eyes. "Hey!" the goblin exclaimed. "Who turned out the lights?" He lurched around sightlessly, still swinging and thrusting out his nipper stick. The vicious creature on the end of the stick was glad to bite anything within its reach. When it made contact with another goblin, its teeth sank in. "Ouch, ouch!" the bitten goblin shrieked. "Hey, stop that, you!" "Stop what?" asked the first goblin, still prodding out unseeingly. The second goblin was now under furious assaults. "Ah, dogweed, rat's meal!" Spitefully, he retaliated by deliberately using his nipper stick. It was the blinded goblin's turn to wail. "Help! Who's attacking me? Where are the lights?" The other two goblins had paused in their tormenting of the beast. This was even better fun. They nudged each other and snickered as they watched the fight. "Get to it!" one of them shouted. "Get him!" yelled the other, hopping up and down in his excitement.